I'm bored. Let's read a book. Oh! Perlot pulled back his chair, and I started to stand up, then sat down. Approaching a craft master in a tavern was an invitation to trouble, so I waited for him to leave before I made my way out to the stable in Gairloch. Although the air was cleaner and the stable far warmer than the Eastthorns had been, my sleep was restless, as if the thunder of that sudden winter storm in Syrtis still echoed in my head. And I kept hearing the phrase, another wizard in the Eastthorns. In time, I did sleep, though I awoke and washed in the trough before the stable hand arrived. He didn't know exactly where Perlot's shop was, but pointed generally to the far side of the mill quarter, and I greased him with another copper to leave Gairloch for the day. Before sunset. I didn't grin, but we both knew that he wouldn't touch Gairloch with even a pitchfork. All being late would cost me money, and I was losing that fast enough anyway. Perlot's crafting, that was what the sign read. Under the sign was a display window with a cabinet and a wooden armchair, both darkened red oak in the Hammerian style. The crafting was better than anything I had seen since leaving Uncle Sardet, and the cabinet might have even gotten a nod from him. Since the door was ajar and no customers were standing in the waiting room, I stepped inside. On the other side of the half wall, the craft master was directing two others, a junior apprentice and either a young journeyman or a senior apprentice slightly older than I was. They were discussing the composition of an oil finish. You there, I'll be with you shortly. Please don't hurry on my account, Master Crafter, I answered, carefully inclining my head. Then I walked to the back side of the display window, inspect the three-drawered cabinet, comparing it more closely to my recollections of Uncle Sardet's work. Perlot's was even more raspy in the morning. I turned to face him. Well, you seem to know something about woodwork. What do you think? I swallowed. The finish is superb, as are the proportions. The grain on the side panel is angled, not much, but enough to detract. Since the joins are hidden, I can't say much about the strength, but the mitering doesn't jam in the wood or leave gaps. What about the wood? The cabinetry is better than the oak. The design would have been better in black oak, but that would have raised the cost to more than most buyers would pay. Perlot nodded. You're looking for a job, that's clear. And you know what's expected, that's clear too. I can't help you. The words rushed together as if he wanted to be done with them. I see. It was my turn to nod. Do you know any crafter who might be able to use a junior journeyman? The masked crafter rubbed his chin. Among the good ones, no. We all have more relatives than work. Then he laughed. If you're as good as you talk, you might try old Destron. He could use the help, but... The man shrugged. Where could I find him? He has a place in the Jeweller's Street, across the market square. The crafter looked over the youth and the young man, then back at me. Is this a hard time for woodcrafting? Not wonderful, not terrible. I'm no Sardet, but sometimes we come close. I managed to nod without dropping my jaw. You ever seen his work, young fellow? Yes, I saw a chest he made, black oak. Perlot pursed his lips. Why do you need a job? I left home young. Didn't like my apprenticeship. My uncle said I was too unsettled, so I headed for Freetown. Then what happened there forced me to leave, rather suddenly. It forced more than a few people to leave. His voice was dry. Well, I wish you well. Try Destron, but I'd advise you against using my name. It's your choice, of course. Before I had even reached the door, the crafter was back among the finishes. Gerlach remained in the stable while I sought out Justin, heading toward the jeweler's street and following the sketchy directions provided by Gerlach. The structure itself, faced in dark red brick and sharing common walls on both sides with more recently painted houses, bore only a small sign above the door. Wood. The house had 2 doors, one which covered a stairway up to the second-floor quarters, and an open doorway on the street level leading into the woodshop. The wide shutters on the lone woodshop window were open through a trace askew on their hinges, as if the pins were worn down and had not been replaced in years. The blue paint on the window casement and upon the shutters themselves had faded nearly to gray, where it had not peeled away to reveal a battered and faded red oak beneath. From what I could tell, there was a small attached structure in the back that might have once housed horses. Certainly the other houses in this area had such small stables. I stepped inside the open doorway and stood at the edge of the workroom. While the workroom wasn't a disaster, the little signs of chaos were everywhere. The carelessly racking of the saws, the sawdust in the chalk drawers, and the cloudiness of the oil used with the grindstone. Yes, a dark man, slightly stooped shoulders, thin-faced, and wearing a clean if worn leather apron over dark trousers, glared at me. I'm looking for Destron. I'm Destron. His voice was thin. My name is Laris. I understand you might be interested in having some help? I'd be willing to work as a junior journeyman basement. I don't know. Shaking my head, I let the skepticism show through as I looked over the incipient chaos, saying nothing. Destron stood by a half-finished tavern bench, backless. The seat was in place, and he had drilled the holes for the pole legs. At a glance, I could tell it was made from 3 different kinds of wood. Scraps or cast-offs, probably. Not quite a crude piece, but definitely not up to the quality or the array of the tools, nor to the size of the workroom or the house or the merchant's neighborhood. Well, he demanded in a thin and testy voice, can you do this kind of work? Yes, I didn't feel like elaborating. How can you show me? I glanced around. The bins were empty except for scraps. I'll make something, and you can judge for yourself. And it will cost is some scraps and the use of your tools. They're good tools. How can I be sure you know how to handle them? His thin voice degenerated into more of a whine. His hand touched the workbench to steady himself as he made a noise, but his eyes stayed on me. Watch me, or work on your bench while I show you. I took that for agreement and began to rummage around. In the end, I found a piece of red oak with some twisted grains at one end that could be turned into an elaborate breadboard, and some smaller plank ends of white oak that would make a small box, perhaps for needles. That turned out to be the easy part. None of the small saws or smaller straight planes had been sharpened in years, and the peg plane was so clogged with sawdust and chips in a way that indicated it had been forced. So I cleaned it first, then oiled it and sharpened it. I managed to do the same with the other planes, but the small saws were beyond my ability, except to clean them. Destron kept looking at me as I cleaned and sharpened the tools, and then as I cleaned off the second bench, re-racking all the odds and ends into the old cabinets that seemed to have a place for everything. Only once after I've done that, I realized it was well after noon. Did I lay out the pieces of wood oak for the box? Father, a light voice came from the now open door at the back of the shop. a second staircase to the quarters. I didn't know anybody was here. The girl was golden-haired, thin like her father, and small, although definitely feminine in shape and demeanor. Her voice was thin like his, but not whiny, just thin or tired. Her face was not quite elfin, with a short and straight nose a touch too long to be called cute, and her eyes were brown and flecked green. She wore a faded blue apron over calf-length brown trousers and an equally faded yellow shirt. Her feet were in sandals. "I didn't mean to surprise you. My name is Laris," I told her. She looked from her father and back to me again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of my videos. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye!